Welcome to Afros and Audio's Black History Month interview series. My name is Talib Jasir, founder and CEO of Afros and Audio Podcast Festival and the Vanguard Podcast Network. I'm excited to spotlight 29 outstanding indie podcast creators and professionals who answer the call to be a part of this series. My guest today is Zaya. Welcome and thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for this conversation. Can you tell us about the journey that led you to create the Zaya Show and how you incorporate your background in marketing and strategic communication into your podcast?
When I started the podcast, I really didn't go into intentions of like, oh, I want to start a podcast. I want to do this. I want to do that. It was really more like I woke up one day and literally said, I'm going to make a podcast. And I just figured out as I go throughout each season. So each season was a great way to not only learn more about myself, but also a great way to learn more marketing. So I was getting my degree at the same time. So I got to use some of my projects and some of the strategies I wanted to learn in class on the podcast. 4 years ago, I'm going for my master's in strategic communication now. So it's still going through the same motion. So each season is a bit new because of the information I'm getting, but also it's a bit new because I'm getting to show more about myself and learning more about myself at the same time.
That's awesome, man. We love transferable skills and marketing. Like, that's a win-win.
It's a win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So the Zaya Show focuses on becoming our true, authentic selves. How do you choose your guests and topics to ensure they align with your theme?
So when I really go with my guests before, I would just go with, I think this is what most podcasters could relate to, is you could get whatever you could get in the first few seasons, okay? But then as I kept going with the mission and with the statements that I wanted to show through the topics, I had guests naturally come on. So a lot of my guest speakers for this season, for example, for season 7 are more life coaches, more sex coaches, more outspoken, more activist. So each season is kind of different, but really what I'm looking for in my guests is being more transferable, being open. I don't want a conversation and closed-minded. So just being open-minded, being genuine with the conversation, and also really just wanting to get the word out there about more positivity in the world, especially on social media, being draining with negative topics nonstop. So that's typically what I look for in my guests. As far as topics, I kind of stay in a line of more like my story where I am personally. So I know I had some episodes in the seasons before where it's like, why I can't keep a man, to now why all of a sudden in season 7, I got an episode all about love. And it's like, oh, I'm in a relationship. So it's kind of like a progression, not only as me as a person, but with my audience as well.
Absolutely. I guess that would make your audience feel a lot more like they know you in a way. Yeah. So growing with your audience is like dope. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. All right. So you said something else inside of that and 7 seasons, which I just want to give you your props for. That's a big deal. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You've achieved significant success with your podcast, including debuting #1 on Good Pods Official. Again, congratulations. And indie personal journals. What strategies did you use to reach such a milestone?
Can't give all my secrets away. I'm joking. So last season, for season 6 was like, I saw success in season 5 with more Apple podcasts, but I got to know about Good Pods more in season 4. It was Good Pods for people that don't know, especially for podcasters. I definitely recommend them to get on that because it's more of like a transferable way to getting to know different podcasters. So it's a great way for the audience to get to listen to more indie podcasters. So not the big time professional podcasters that we know and love. However, you get to show more organic chemistry to the ones that are more indie style like me. I don't have a network that I'm signed to. I don't get paid for it. So it's really more focused on like the conversation and if people are interested with you. So I really got into that more focus and started to focus more like I want to be known as an indie podcaster versus like I'm trying to be professional and get a network, which is really cool, but I still wanted that creative freedom at the end of the day. So season 6, I knew for sure I wanted to focus on that route. However, it wasn't planned to. So I released an episode before the premiere, just surprise drop, just saying like, yeah, I just want to drop it just to drop it because it's on Valentine's Day, and it's like, thank you, next. And then I released the next episode, the premiere episode, so it was kind of like 2 in 1 stone type of approach. And then coincidentally, I went #1. So then after that, I was like, oh, I think I'm onto something. And then all of a sudden, I'm starting to see people doing preseason episodes. So it's like, with my marketing skill, it's helping the community. It's just helping the community. So I'm very proud of it. And then for season 7, I kind of been more laid back. However, still seeing great success from that, being number 1 currently still. So it's a lot of great things that I'm grateful for. But at the end of the day, I'm just happy that people are listening to the podcast and getting that message that I'm trying to send to them.
That's awesome. It says that you are creating a great product and that the work is good. So that's awesome. In your experience, how has podcasting impacted your personal growth, particularly in terms of confidence and creativity?
So before I became a podcaster, I was an actor in theater, stage acting mainly, and that's where I really shined on stage, and that's where I really got to do all the energy and get that reception, like, "Oh, you're a good actor," and I'm like, "Thank you." But when COVID hit, obviously everybody had to be shut down, so that's when I started learning about podcasting. But fast forward a few years, each year where I'm growing in a podcast space, it's not only about the audience, but it's also about the reception within the community. So people be like, "Oh, I listened to your episode. You did real good. I like that topic. All right, you young now, but you got some wisdom." That is great to me, and I really take that in consideration as well. Helping with different organizations, I partner with Legacy Cares for season 6. So wow, if people want to come to with me for collaborations, especially for organizations, that does something for my confidence as well. If it means something very well and very like healthy, that makes me more happy at the end of the day. But as a podcaster, numbers are great. Being number 1 is great, but at the end of the day, having an active fan base and having active social media accounts with them to just like, "Hey, what y'all want to see?" That's more that just boosts my confidence up, but also still keeps me more like, "Okay, we're in it together" approach.
That's great. And another transferable skill, acting, being able to express yourself.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's awesome. And you talked about something I push people to really, especially when they have content that can support an organization, can support a certain demographic, to look to organizations to either create content or provide content that can be
right.
educational. So talk a little bit about that and how you even discovered doing that.
Okay, season 1 and season 2, I was really just trying to find my fitting in the community. I didn't know where I wanted to go with it because for me, I have several things I am. I'm a gay man, I'm a black man, I'm a Gen Z, and it's a lot of things that I'm from the South. So it's a lot of things that I could really tackle on, but it was more focused like, okay, what's my niche? And I was just trying to fit in with the box, but once I got to like season 4, where I did my first real interview, and I think it was with I'm trying to think real fast. No, it was season 5. Season 5 was more where I had like a partnership with Queer to Queer Festival, and that was more focused on like indie LGBTQ films. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna help you out, promote your stuff. And naturally, it just went into more like, okay, this is a nonprofit. We want to talk about our organization, talk about the moral of like why we came up with this organization, as well as taking inspiration from people that I find inspirational, like Oprah. Hands down, 90s was the best episodes. Can't tell me otherwise. So I took that inspiration as well. So really getting to help not only tell my story, because I love talking about myself, but I don't want to do that. At some point, I want to also give my audience some information that they could walk away with, but also help people at the end of the day. And that's kind of my passion, especially with marketing. If I know how to market you very well, I know how to get my audience to be like, okay, Zaya's right. I'm gonna trust him on this one. So that's where I really got into organizations and as well people with services, especially with life coaching, because life coaching, I need several life coaches, okay? um, so really helping out with people in that source as well as it's just genuine, that's what I really look for.
That's awesome. I'm a life coach and I need a life coach, so
Okay.
I get it. I get it. And I love Gen Zers. Y'all are dope. I'm not doper than me, but y'all
Okay.
dope. Y'all dope. Gen Zers I love y'all. So so we the blueprint. We taught y'all how to be Ubuntu. You understand?
Yeah,
But
let's
yeah, but so that's really dope. And speaking of Gen Z, do you find that to be the majority of your audience?
actually no. It's millennials. Millennials and older Gen Z. So like 25, 26. And then I have a few boomers in there too, but young Gen Zs, no. So
Well, I have the recent data says Gen Zs are listening and they're getting into
okay,
podcasts. So that's really dope. And so
that
you are a testament to that as well.
thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, for sure. The podcasting industry is constantly evolving. And so since you've been doing this since 2020, based on your experiences, what trends do you see emerging in podcasts content and marketing?
The trend that I saw, like, is it a trend that I saw that went through and then it's like, okay, throwback, or is it like a trend that's now active?
Whatever's coming up for you.
Okay, because there's one trend that's coming up, and it's like something that I knew would be like, okay, because people would be this way. Video podcasting. I didn't think, like, before in 2020, everybody was just trying to get the audio pack down, and everybody was just like, okay, a cue cover, audio. All of a sudden, I don't know if it was because now people just want visuals with it and we're just getting all technical with it. Especially in 2023 to 2024, it was more focused on video podcasting. So that's the trend that I see now. Past trends that I saw before, it was more when people would just release a podcast episode every single day, like Vlogmas, except it's Podmas, which I like. But that's kind of a trend that fades out real fast. I don't blame them. Recording an episode every single day, no. But that's one trend that I really see, and I really love that trend, especially because it's like you get to be more creative. You get to make videos, you get to have a setup, you can do behind the scenes as well. So it's a lot of things that I see, as well. Live streams is becoming more popular instead of just recording it, just talk with your audience then. So those are a few trends that I'm seeing right now in the podcast industry that I'm loving.
All right. So I can imagine that with your spirit and personality, video was like, yes, let's do it.
Yeah, I love
You
video.
loving it? Okay.
I'm loving it. Unfortunately, I don't like the camera part. Technical wise, I don't like it. I need someone else to do it for me. But otherwise, getting on a camera and talking, yeah.
Got it. That's awesome. So you mentioned in the submission your desire to go on a podcast tour.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share more about this idea and how you envision it contributing to the growth of the Zaya show?
Absolutely. So this is something that I knew for a long, long time. I kid you not, that I wanted to do. Like, this is one thing that stuck around, and I'm literally, and I know this is going to happen. I'm manifesting it still. So I'm a theater person. I love to perform on stage. I love to talk with the audience, and I do watch some podcast lives where it's like in person and people there laughing, kikiing, all that good stuff. But what I want to do with a podcast tour, like Zaya Live Tour, is I want it to be more theatrical. Yes, we still gonna have the conversation, but I also want to add in more, like add in skits and things like that, and really get into shine light on organizations within the state. So for example, I'm from Louisiana, but if I go on tour to, let's just say, California, yes, we'll have a topic for that show right there. It's not gonna be the same thing, but also we'll have a guest from that area, and then as well we have an organization from the area. So it's more like, it's literally like me on the bus, like, okay, let's talk. Let's just have a great conversation and really record a podcast season off of that. So hopefully season 8 will be, that'll be very cool. But that's how I want to do the podcast tour for sure.
I love that, man. And it's very innovative, you putting some thought in behind it and creating something different. And that's always something that we want to see for sure. And experience. You've been doing this for 7, almost 8 seasons, like fresh, something new to do in the podcast
exactly.
to keep it fun. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Because a lot of things, especially for me, I like to say, if I can make it through an episode listening to it back, well, I'm going to release it. So each episode that I literally release is the ones that I'm like, okay, this is attention grabbing, is entertaining. I loved it. And then as well, I'll make sure that it's good. Now, I did have some episodes that are in a vault that were just like, I don't know, but we'll just keep it there just in case on a rainy day. However, each season I always change it up. I change up my hairstyle. This season I had braids in. Last season I had blonde, like similar to this hair. So I always change it up for each season just to keep it, not only show like my progression as a person, but also just to keep it more fun and keep it entertaining, discovering new aesthetics that I like. The current aesthetic now that I have, I'm really loving the black and gray and the yellow chef kisses. But as far as episodes, I do switch up the topics a little more. So it's like still in the same ground, like being your authentic self, but it's more like in this season, for season 7, since I'm 23, we're talking more about like intimacy. We're talking more about physical health, and we're talking more about mental and like how we could go through that transition. And I use my own personal stories. So for example, I just got my first apartment. I just got my first job. Okay, this is a lot of great things, but how do we also handle that transition? So Gen Z could also listen and be like, okay, I'm not alone. Or if a millennial is like, oh, I've been there. I could relate and give me advice. Hey, that's great for me too. But at the end of the day, it's something that we could all relate in. And that's what I really want for the podcast going forward, just head on.
Yeah, I love that, man. And you talked about loving your artwork right now. Is that something that you do and create, or do you have a team or some support?
No, I don't have a team as of now, but I do create all the graphics. So fun fact, because I was a marketing major, we had to take a graphic design. I was terrible. Like when I tell you I was showed you all my projects, I was terrible. It looked like a third grader did it. But thanks to Canva and Pro Canva and all the skills that I learned, and I'm still learning. So it's like each season I'm trying something new. So yes, I know a little bit of graphic design, but not too much where I'll be like, yeah, I could do it full on.
Got it. That's really awesome that you are doing all of these things, paying attention to your aesthetic, progressing with your audience, progressing with yourself. I mean, that's the first and most important piece. Would you say that you have started out creating with yourself first or your audience first?
That's a good question. I think for season one and season two and season three, and I mentioned those 3 seasons because I feel like at that point I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know who I was because I was a sophomore in college. I was trying to figure out my major. I changed my major 8 times. And then at that point as well, I had an audience, but it was like some episodes would hit and some episodes would not. So I went more with like what I was expecting, what they wanted from me. But when it became around season 4, it was like, okay, I know myself a little more. Now I know what I want to go with. And ever since then, I mean, I've been looking more into myself and growing within myself because that would transfer over to the episodes. If I'm not being very honest and very, very transparent, you're probably going to be like, okay, why he's talking about this? Because I don't feel like he's interested in this.
All right. I love that you have progressed with your podcast. Collaboration plays a significant role in the podcasting community. Can you share your experiences with collaboration, such as March to the Record Book?
Oh, absolutely. So, March to the Record Book is honestly one of those collaborations that don't happen often. It honestly does not, especially because it was all genuine creators that just love podcasting, especially because it was for MLK Day. Especially black podcasters, which I totally am hands down for, especially representation in the podcast industry is great, and I really love it, especially for African Americans. But that came around. I think I saw it on Instagram, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to do it." But I was like, "I'm not sure if I'm going to last for 24 hours because I can't. Like, I could talk for 30 minutes, but I'm not going to talk for 24 hours straight." But once I realized, like, oh wait, it's a team effort. That was one that I truly loved. And I'm really happy that we broke that record. I know they did it again. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it because of work. Oh, but another collaboration that I truly love is one that I recently just did for season 7. It's honestly, I think most of them. However, I did it with the creator from the Hung Up podcast, Eric. That episode gonna be released very soon, or it's probably released by now, because it released at the end of January. But that one honestly just felt like a mirror effect because I work in higher education, he works in higher education, and it's kind of like a mirror of like, wow, could this be future Zaya? Who knows? So it's episodes like that where it's more reflective and more transferable and personal episodes that I'm just loving, especially a lot. So I have a lot of great collaborations because it's very genuine, and I really love connecting with people, hands down.
That's cool. That's cool. I love that. I've never even heard about March to the Record Book, so I got to check it out.
Yeah.
That's super dope. Okay. All right, cool. So for many podcasters, finding their unique voice is a challenge. And how did you find yours? I know you've talked about it already, so there might be a catalyst or something specific where you like, listen, I need to talk from the heart. I need to talk from where I'm standing, not from
Right.
these other places. But on top of that, what advice would you give to others trying to do the same?
So as a person in general, I was shy before. I barely talked. I barely did anything. I did not like the attention. Coincidentally, now I got a podcast. So when I did the podcast, I didn't know if I wanted to show myself yet because I didn't want people to judge me. I didn't want the internet to come for me. I didn't want the haters thinking, "Oh, I don't support my community because I don't support these type of views." Once I got over that and say, you know what, they're gonna find something they don't like about you either way, that's when I start embracing not only certain parts of myself. So I knew for sure if I was talking to a younger person than me and that person is black and queer, or they're just like in a different minorities in general, it's like I want them to know that it's okay to be their true authentic self. So what message am I sending to them if I'm not being my true self? So I knew for sure. I was like, you know what? I was signed to a few like alliances, and I was like, listen, I want to do this. I'm black, I'm gay, I'm this, I'm that, I'm Gen Z. I want to talk about anything that I want to talk about, and I don't want to have no restrictions on it. So if you want to let me go, that is wonderful. And once I got out of those networks, because I just felt like that was more better for me, just to have that freedom, just say whatever I want, because I don't know what I'm gonna say. I'm a Gen Zer. So having that approach now, it reciprocates now to the point where I'm more comfortable in mentoring podcasters and getting to that point where they have their voice heard. And every time I get on the mic, I feel good. I tell podcasters you should feel great after recording an episode. You shouldn't feel tired. Now, there's some days where I do feel tired, but you shouldn't feel mentally exhausted. Like, oh, it's homework, it's work, it's not working. This is creativity that could someday come into work, which would be very nice. Now, as far as advice for people that try and get into podcasting and use their authentic voice, I would say just look more deep down to yourself. I knew there were sometimes I had to remember what do Zaya believes in, because sometimes we could be very wish-washy with what we believe in and opinions, especially on social media. So my one advice for podcasters is when you're planning out your episodes, don't go on social media. Because you're gonna think like, oh wait, I thought this, but everybody's thinking this, so now I feel like I have to think how everybody else thinks. So for the views, when really, if you go with the opposite, most people gonna want to listen because they're gonna be like, why you think this way? So really sticking with your gut, not being on social media as much when you're planning the episodes, and definitely right before the recording episodes. I don't want to be on social media, no. But those few things, and not only that, but just really being open to collaboration, because you really learn with experience and with collaborations and networking. Because I could say this one thing, but someone else might have a completely different advice that could work for you even more. So it's really just about being in the open mind of just like, we're here to work together, not just one man show. We're all doing it together.
Yeah, I love your mind, Zaya. You're 23 years old. I'm proud of you for whatever it's worth. Awesome advice, really.
Thank
Yeah, for sure. You emphasize the importance of building a story through every piece of content. Can you elaborate on how you apply this principle in your podcast episodes?
Absolutely. So I know back in the day, if y'all go back and listen from season one, I would use celebrities. 'Cause I was like, oh, I love pop culture. But for me, I hate, like, this is me being very honest, I don't like researching pop culture, because sometimes it could be real interesting or sometimes it could be real draining depending on the celebrity. So I was like, okay, everybody's doing that, so you know what, I'm gonna just use my story. I'm gonna just do my storytelling the way that I know, because I know it off the back of my hand. I don't need to think about what I'm going to say. This is how I felt in the story. So I know, for example, I did an episode about me not having a father in my life in season 3, and that's one of my popular ones. And just telling that story, not going to full details about it, but just telling, like, launching off with that story, and then going to, okay, how do you progress without a parent in your life? And a lot of people, coincidentally, Gen Zers, listen to that episode, which was really good. So really kicking off with a story that hits close to home, because people have empathy for others when it's like, I could feel what you're going through. So that's how I approach storytelling now, through a more personable point of view.
That's great. And I'm curious about, because you have done a lot of episodes and been around in people's ears for a while, and I'm sure a lot of people think that they know you very well. How do you balance that, knowing that I'm still living a whole life over here? This is my personality, this is my podcast, my platform. How do you balance that, if that is even a challenge?
At some points it is a challenge. I know sometimes podcasting and real life kind of get meshed in together, because that is part of my identity regardless. But as long as I keep a strict schedule, like, okay, this is when I record, this is when I'm going to make an exception for this interview, and then I'm going to go back to living my life, and that's well not sharing people names. I mean, if I start sharing people names, then they're going to know who I'm talking about. um as well, just not sharing things that I'm not ready to talk about. If it's something I'm talking about in the podcast, I've been moved on for that PSA. And it's also something that happened way in the past, like 3 years ago, recent. It's never something that's in the moment. I'm stressed out. I'm letting you know, I just want to communicate that story very well. But the story isn't the main thing. The main thing is that topic that we're talking about in that episode. So, for example, if we're talking about this is like, the title is "This Is My Life" that just came out, and I have a guest speaker on, and I'm talking about like my personal experience with, like, I thought people didn't like me, it's not me saying this so people could be like, wow, people didn't like Zaya. Who is it? Da, 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 da. No, it's just a launch off point so that way you can feel more personable with it. So when you hear the advice of like, this is how we can live our lives more, it could transfer it better off. So that's how I handled that type of combination, but I don't have a problem with that at all as of now.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. What's next for the Zaya show? You talked about the tour, which I'm excited about. As soon as you're ready, let us know so we can make sure we're supporting and in the building. Can you give us a sneak peek into your upcoming season premiering in January this month?
Yes. So season 7 already premiered. Premiered this month. So I have a few episodes out. For example, like Bold Moves. That's very popular. It's still on the charts right now. And I'm like, okay, I released that 3 weeks ago. It's all about like a catch up with me. And then I have like some episodes like, did adult content go too far? That's kind of new. Like, wow, Zaya talking about those topics. And then a few other episodes that coming in as well. I just did a live stream with Nick Barry. Recently, just talking more about like the LGBTQ and how we could improve our lifestyles and just like mental health in general. But the future, as far as the future for the Zaya show, is very bright. I took some time off after season 6 because of the transition from college into adulthood, and I was like, okay, y'all, being very real, I need some time to figure this out and get my apartment. So let me just work on this and I'll come back. So this year is really the year of the Zaya show. So merch is coming out very soon this year as well. I want to continue doing more episodes this year, giving everything like as well as with collaborations. I really want to go into more podcast conference. I know I did Afro Audios in August. That was like one of the few podcast things that I did while I was on my hiatus. But I really want to go out to more conferences in person, do more presentations and those sorts because I really love that. And that was a launch off point. Shout out to you. So thank you for making the Afro Audios podcast festival. Definitely hands down appreciated. And then as well, what else is coming up next? I'm also going to be working on a network. So I'm going to be developing a network called BU Network. And it's not a network where you go and be guaranteed money. No, this is a network where your creativity and my skills and other people's skills, we meet together and we help each other out. And let's just say, still working out on the Kings, but I wanted to be something very different, but also be aimed to more like minorities because a lot of networks, yes, they're out here, but it's so hard to get into. So I just want to have a network that is highly efficient, that's where podcasters could go to. And it's like, hey, I'm new to the scene. Zaya, do you know who I can get in contact with for this category? Like, yeah, girl, sure. Da 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 da. So that network is going to be more about united, helping each other rather than money goals. Which I mean, hey, that's great, but let's help each other get a footing first and just helping people connect and grow. So that's what I'm going to be working on as well as a producer a lot. I really want to get to more producing. And then, yes, the Zaya tour, I would love to go on that tour right now. However, I just started grad school. So I don't think I'm going to be going on tour till manifesting it for 2026. Because by then I'll be graduated. And then at that point, I think the Zaya show will be on season 10. So that's why I'm like, maybe season 10. I don't know. But the tour is something I really want to do. I just don't want to rush into it. So yeah, that's what I got going on right now for the future.
That's awesome. And you said a few things I wanted to explore really quickly. One, I'm glad you came back. You took your hiatus. Some people get high out of here. They don't come back. So I'm glad you came back. The other piece you spoke on, and this is about giving yourself permission, right? You mentioned, and it's almost like I thought about the actors and actresses that be on Disney shows, and then they come out and then they're a completely different person and everybody's judging them like, but she was just 12. So how did you give yourself permission to say, okay, but I'm older now, and so I'm going to talk about older content now, and I get to do that?
Yeah, with the support, I have a podcast auntie. Shout out to Q for the Pillow Talk with the T podcast. She is my podcast auntie. So I have a lot of people that are like supporting me, especially millennials or older people that's just like, hey, you're doing a really good thing. Just keep doing what you're doing. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. So it wasn't like a hard transition. It just felt funny to me because I'm the guy with the sweater that was like 19 and I was talking about like rainbows and sunshines. Now I'm talking about bills and I'm talking about income and we're talking about adult content and is there a problem with that? And we're talking about relationships and marriages and engagements. So it's like a different podcast show altogether. So that's why I really love breaking it up into seasons. So if you want to know like literally how I went through college up to now, you could literally listen to it, which is really cool. So that's what I love about it, especially.
That's great. I'm glad that you have decided to just keep moving forward with your podcast. Sustainability is key, and I'm glad that you are looking forward to season 10. That's awesome. So, finally, is there another podcast or podcast host that has inspired or influenced you that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Okay, I got several. Oh my god. Oh my god. I can't just name one. I'm a podcast nerdy. So shout out to the Archie podcast. Hands down, when I was in my hiatus, I'm being very blunt. In my hiatus, I did not feel like recording a podcast episode. I don't know if it was because I was just burnt out from college and I was just burnt out from recording season 6 and like within 2 months, 18 episodes, all that, and doing the promote, all that, and I was just like, I'm tired. But the Archie podcast truly gave me a moment to where it was like, wow, this is what podcast is doing. And this is the level that I want to get on to, especially being a Black queer podcaster from the South, him as well. I just saw so much within myself from him. So the Archie podcast is one as well. Psychopath podcast, that's another good one that really kept me going through the hiatus, just listening to just like, wow, this is what she going through, and just like a lot of great moments from there as well. This is Life podcast, love that, by JJ. It's the Michelle podcast, always making me laugh. She hands out making me laugh anytime, especially during work. I listen to her as well. Any other podcasters that could pop in my brain? The Intermingle podcast, that's one of my new ones that I've been obsessed with, and I just got them on the podcast, which is really good. And that's a gay couple, and they just talk about different pop culture, mental health, all that great stuff. So those are a few. I know I got some like Ken the Gentleman. Can't forget him. Ken the Gentleman, literally the king of podcasts. I'm saying that. So I've been listening to him for a long time, and he just reached 5 years. So shout out to him. Congratulations. And I think that's it for now. That came up in my head that I listen to on a daily basis.
Would you know that there are podcasters who don't listen to podcasts?
Absolutely.
It's a thing. It's definitely a thing. So to hear that you are not only a podcast host and you love podcasts is refreshing. And it also, what people get to really understand is it is, as you mentioned, inspirational. Like you can hear someone else's podcast and be like, ooh, even if it's not the same idea, you get inspiration from that. So it is really important to listen to the medium that you are focused on. Yeah.
Absolutely. With podcasts, I know I watch a lot of talk shows. So like the
Mm-hmm.
Wendy Williams show, that's where I got my personality from, low key. I ain't gonna lie. The Oprah show, definitely, those are the two main ones as well, talk show wise, that I watch. That gave me some inspiration. So I took a little bit of that, then took a little podcasting, took a little theater inspiration, took a little like, Black history inspiration, and just mashed it all together, and that's how we got the Zaya show, which is really good. So any inspiration is good inspiration for a podcast, but listen to podcast, people. You could find me on all social medias almost. So I'm gonna break it down for you. You can find me on Instagram. That's one of the ones that I'm highly on. Love Instagram. So the underscore Zaya. So ZAYA underscore show. As well, you can find me on Twitter at Zaya Show. You can find me on YouTube. Yes, I got visuals. And you just type in the Zaya Show. Those are my three main ones. As well, I'm gonna be getting on TikTok later. But I'm not on TikTok now. That's a whole nother world. But you can listen to the podcast on all streaming platforms. So I'm on Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, of course, iHeartRadio, even everything but SoundCloud, literally. So you could just look up the Zaya Show and you'll be able to listen to any episodes. So season 7 just started, so you're not far behind. So if you want to check out that season, you totally can. If you want to check out any other seasons, definitely can. So that's where you could definitely find me.
That's awesome. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation, Zaya. It's been great getting to know you a little bit better and to understand your inspirations, your aspirations. Congratulations to you. I'm really excited for your future and as you move this forward. And again, the tours and everything, I can tell that you are excited about what's to come, and that's exciting. So
Yeah.
thank you. If you have nothing else that you want to share with the audience, I'll close this out.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. Definitely coming to Afro Audio's podcast festival, so, like manifesting in, because I know it's in October for this year. So now I got time to get my coin ready to get on that plane and then hit it up. So definitely, thank you so much for really stepping out, making a special place for Black podcasters, especially because it is a small percentage of us. So it means a lot when we have a space where we can really just shine a light on how beautiful each creator is in their own way. So I want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. This episode with you and all the other episodes just shows how much brilliance and innovation is in the indie podcast space. So I'm grateful for you for sharing all of you with the audience today. So thank you. All right, I'm going to close this out. I want to give a big thanks to our Afros in Audio and Black Podcasters Association members for supporting our commitment for community and collaboration. If you'd like to join the Black Podcast Association, the link will be in the description. If you want to join us at the 6th Annual Afros in Audio Podcast Festival, visit afrosinaudio.com. Follow at Afros in Audio on all social media channels, and you can find and follow me at Talib Jasir on Instagram. So thanks again, Zaya, for being a part of Afros in Audio's Black History Month interview series. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Because listen, Black History Month, woo, okay.
There you go.